When time had no name, before calendars, stories travelled only by firelight. When time had no name, the world was measured not in dates or numbers, but in the rhythm of seasons, the cycle of rivers, and the steady wandering of stars across the sky. Humanity had not yet carved its calendars, but life still moved forward, one firelit evening after another. Imagine a gathering of hunter-gatherers clustered around flames, their shadows stretched long against the cave wall. Sparks floated upward like small constellations, fading into the dark, while above them the real constellations burned steadily. For these people, the stars were both a ceiling and a clock. The night was not just an absence of sun, but a vast library of signs and omens. Archaeology offers us glimpses of this forgotten worldview. In the Blombos Cave of South Africa, fragments of ochre engraved with delicate cross-hatchings date back 75,000 years. To modern eyes, they may appear as idle scratches, but their precision betrays intent. These markings could be the earliest human symbols, proto-writing, perhaps even proto-history. And if they were not writing, then they were art. A way of capturing fleeting thought, of pulling the abstract into permanence. Scholars still debate whether such markings were spiritual, practical, or purely expressive. What we do know is that they are some of the first attempts to pin the flow of time into something that endures. Elsewhere, in the painted caves of Lascaux in France, torchlight illuminates walls alive with animals, galloping horses, massive bulls, and stags frozen in eternal motion. Dated to nearly 17,000 years ago, the images breathe with a vitality that is unsettling. Did these paintings serve as hunting prayers, ways to conjure success before the chase? Or were they records of great events, visual stories retold for children? Some anthropologists believe they may even have been part of early rituals, where sound and image merged in the echoing darkness. Scholars still debate whether the caves were sanctuaries of myth or simple storytelling theatres. Yet even these creations existed in a world without hours or days as we know them. What marked time for these early humans was not a calendar pinned on a wall, but the flooding of a river, the arrival of migrating herds, the slow tilt of constellations. In their stories, time was circular, life was a wheel, birth, death, return, birth again. This idea of cyclical time is reflected in many later traditions, the Hindu yugas, the Aztec suns, even the ancient Greek concept of eternal recurrence, all echo the same rhythm. And yet, somewhere along the way, humans also began to sense that time could move like an arrow, with beginnings and endings that never repeated. It is tempting to think of this as a kind of awakening, the slow realization that moments pass and do not return. Even myths reflect this struggle to understand. The Maori people of New Zealand describe an age when sky and earth were pressed together, and time did not flow. Only when they were separated did light and seasons emerge. The Greeks placed Chronos, time itself, as a primal force born from chaos. Across the world, cultures preserved stories of a before time, as though humanity could not help but remember when time had not yet been named. One site above all illustrates the strangeness of this age. At Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey, builders more than 11,000 years ago raised enormous carved pillars into circles. This was millennia before villages, before pottery, before agriculture, and yet there it stands, stone cut, transported, and arranged with staggering sophistication. Some archaeologists suggest the site was later deliberately buried, hidden from future generations. Scholars still debate whether it was a temple, an observatory, or something beyond our categories. But Göbekli Tepe reminds us that even in the nameless dawn of humanity, people could shape monuments that seem to defy the very flow of time. So when we speak of a time before calendars, before history, we are not speaking of emptiness. We are speaking of firelight gatherings, painted walls, carved stones, and myths of beginnings. We are speaking of the birth of memory itself, when humans first reached into the void and began to mark their place within it. This was when time itself was not yet measured, but it was felt, lived, and told. Stones buried on purpose. Göbekli Tepe was entombed, not abandoned. On a quiet hilltop in southeastern Turkey lies a site that rewrote the timeline of civilization. Göbekli Tepe, a name that means pot-belly hill, was not discovered until the 1990s, when archaeologists realized that the mound beneath their feet concealed an ancient monument of staggering importance. Beneath layers of soil, they uncovered circles of towering stone pillars, some weighing up to 10 tons, arranged with a precision that defies the simplicity we often ascribe to Stone Age societies. These circles date back more than 11,000 years, older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than Stonehenge, older even than the invention of farming. What makes Göbekli Tepe extraordinary is not just its age, but the intention behind it. The site was not merely abandoned, left to weather and decay. Instead, it appears to have been deliberately buried. Soil was heaped over its carved pillars, sealing them away for millennia. This act of entombment suggests reverence, secrecy, or perhaps fear. Why would ancient builders labour so intensely to hide what they had already built? Scholars still debate whether it was an act of ritual closure, a way of ending the temple's use, or something more enigmatic. The carvings etched into these stones are as fascinating as their scale. Foxes, snakes, vultures, and abstract symbols emerge from the limestone with a vitality that suggests meaning we can no longer fully decipher. Some scholars propose that the animals represented constellations, mapping the night sky in mythic form. Others see them as totems, linked to the beliefs of clans who gathered here. Whatever the interpretation, the images whisper of a worldview where the boundaries between earth and sky, human and animal, were far thinner than they are today. Even more puzzling is what Göbekli Tepe tells us about society at that time. For decades, historians assumed that religion and monuments came after agriculture, that humans first settled, learned to farm, and then developed temples and rituals. Göbekli Tepe overturns that story. Here, it seems religion may have come first, drawing people together in vast gatherings that required cooperation, coordination, and surplus food. Perhaps it was the desire to feed those who built the temples that sparked agriculture itself. In this way, belief may have given birth to farming, not the other way around. And then there is the strange geometry of the site. The massive T-shaped pillars are arranged in circles, with two taller stones set in the centre of each. Their silhouettes evoke human forms, broad shoulders, arms carved faintly along their sides, suggesting they may have represented ancestors, deities, or both. Standing within one of these circles is to feel enclosed in a symbolic theatre, as if the stones themselves were an audience bearing witness to ceremonies now lost. Legends from the region sometimes echo this sense of buried memory. Some locals once believed the hill contained an ancient graveyard or even a treasure hoard sealed away in antiquity. In a way, they were right. It was a treasury of history itself, hidden under layers of deliberate concealment. Why it was covered remains one of archaeology's most haunting questions. Was it protection from invaders, a ritual death for the site, or did its builders fear the power of what they had made, choosing to bury it before walking away forever? Scholars still debate whether Göbekli Tepe's entombment was an act of devotion or a quiet rebellion against the gods it honoured. Today, as we stand at the excavated rings of stone, we look backward into a chapter of humanity we never knew existed. These pillars suggest not only that our ancestors were builders, but that they were thinkers, dreamers, and believers, long before we gave those words meaning. They remind us that even in the Stone Age, humanity was capable of envisioning the eternal and of shaping that vision in rock, and then, just as mysteriously, of choosing to hide it from the world. The monument that outlived rain, the Sphinx bears scars from ancient storms. At the edge of the Giza Plateau, where desert sands meet the Nile's long shadow, the Great Sphinx sits in silent vigilance. Carved from a single massive limestone outcrop, the statue stretches 73 meters in length, its human face crowned with a royal headdress, its lion's body poised as though to guard eternity. To most visitors, the Sphinx is inseparable from the pyramids around it, a guardian of the tombs of kings. But the story etched into its weathered surface is stranger and perhaps far older than what official histories suggest. Mainstream Egyptology dates the Sphinx to around 2500 BCE, built during the reign of Pharaoh Khafra, yet the monument's body tells another tale. Deep vertical fissures and rounded grooves run along its enclosure walls, patterns unlike the marks left by wind-driven desert sand. To geologist Robert Schoch and others, these grooves resemble the erosion caused by heavy rainfall Egypt has not seen in such abundance for thousands of years before Khafra's reign. If true, the Sphinx may have been carved millennia earlier, in an era when the Sahara was still green. Scholars still debate whether these marks are evidence of weather far older than the dynastic pharaohs, or whether they can be explained by other natural processes. If the Sphinx predates Egypt's Old Kingdom, then who built it? And why would they choose such a form, a lion's body with a human head? Some suggest it may once have worn the face of a lion entirely, only to be recarved into a human visage later. This theory raises unsettling possibilities. The Sphinx we see today may be an adaptation, a second life carved over an older monument, its original identity lost beneath a mask. Legends from ancient Egypt itself only deepen the mystery. In the dream stele of Thutmose IV erected between the Sphinx's paws around 1400 BCE, the young prince records a vision he claimed to have had while sleeping in the shadow of the Colossus. In his dream, the Sphinx spoke to him, promising kingship if he cleared the sands from its body. The stele suggests that by Thutmose's time, the Sphinx was already ancient, already buried and forgotten by the desert. The Egyptians themselves may have inherited it from a past they did not fully remember. Curiously, many cultures preserved memories of lion-headed guardians or hybrid beings at gateways to the divine. From Mesopotamian lamassu to Greek sphinxes, the motif repeats. Powerful watchers stationed at thresholds between the mortal and the sacred. Was Egypt's sphinx part of this wider pattern or the inspiration for it? Scholars still debate whether the Great Sphinx was a unique creation of Egypt or a remnant of an older, more widespread tradition of guardian figures. And then there are the unanswered questions of its missing nose and beard. The Sphinx's face today appears mutilated, its nose gone, its chin once adorned with a royal beard that fragments suggest was added centuries after its carving. These losses have fueled legends of vandalism, conquest, and even cannon fire, though the true story remains uncertain. Like so much else about the Sphinx, its face is a palimpsest of memory and loss. Standing before the monument today, one feels both awe and unease. It is too large, too silent, too eroded by mysteries we cannot resolve. Was it a sentinel of dynastic Egypt, or a survivor from an age drowned in storms? The Sphinx is more than stone. It is a riddle etched into desert bedrock, a question that has outlasted empires. And though we may measure it, photograph it, and surround it with tourists, it continues to gaze eastward as though remembering reigns we have forgotten. The night knowledge went dark, Alexandria burned, and centuries collapsed. In the ancient city of Alexandria, where the Nile met the Mediterranean, there once stood a library that was said to hold all the knowledge of the world, Founded around 300 BCE under the rule of Ptolemy II, the Library of Alexandria was more than a building. It was a vision of human memory made permanent. Scrolls collected from Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and even distant lands along the Silk Road filled its shelves. Ships docking in the city's harbour were searched for manuscripts, their texts copied by scribes before the originals were sometimes returned, sometimes kept. Within those walls, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, history, and poetry mingled in a single universal archive. And then it was gone. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria has become a symbol for cultural loss, an event so devastating that even today we shudder to imagine what was lost. Was it one fire or many? Ancient sources disagree. Some blame Julius Caesar, whose siege of the city in 48 BCE may have accidentally set part of the library alight. Others speak of later tragedies, under Emperor Aurelian in the 3rd century CE, or during the purges of pagan temples in the 4th. Still others whisper of a slow decline, neglect rather than a single catastrophic blaze. Scholars still debate whether the library perished in a single night of flames or vanished gradually, scroll by scroll, over centuries. What those scrolls contained is the great unknown. Imagine texts by thinkers whose names have not even survived. Lost plays of Sophocles, lost treatises of mathematicians who may have glimpsed ideas centuries before their rediscovery. Some accounts suggest that the works of Heraclitus, the philosopher of fire and change, were once housed there. Others dream that texts from Mesopotamia or Egypt, written in tongue, as now extinct, may have preserved knowledge of civilizations that even the ancients barely remembered. Legends add to the enigma. It is said that in Alexandria scholars once tried to calculate the circumference of the earth with remarkable precision. Others speak of experiments in steam power, hydraulics, and automata, machines that might have propelled human history forward by centuries had their designs survived. One curious figure, Hero of Alexandria, did leave us fragments, descriptions of coin-operated machines, theatrical automations, and even a primitive steam engine. But how much more could have been hidden in those vanished shelves? The cultural wound of this loss is echoed across history. Centuries later, the Arab general Amr ibn al-As, when asked about preserving books from Alexandria, is rumoured to have replied, "If they agree with the Quran, they are unnecessary. If they disagree, they are dangerous." Whether this story is fact or fiction, it captures the tension between knowledge and power, between preservation and control. Each telling of the library's fall reflects not only on the event itself, but on the values of those remembering it. And yet, fragments survived. Some works of Archimedes, Euclid, and Ptolemy trickled down through copies, echoing the greater whole. But the scale of the loss ensures that human history has gaps we can never fill. What if we could read the thoughts of forgotten astronomers who charted stars invisible to the naked eye? What if a manuscript preserved the stories of vanished civilizations like Atlantis or Mu, filtered through ancient lenses? Scholars still debate whether the truth of humanity's deepest mysteries was lost there forever, or whether those scrolls contained nothing more extraordinary than the slow, steady work of science and philosophy already known. Today, the Library of Alexandria stands less as a building and more as an idea, the idea that knowledge itself can be fragile, that memory can be erased not just by time, but by human hands. Its ashes remind us that progress is never guaranteed, that entire centuries can collapse into silence with the fall of a single roof. Figures scratched for the sky, Nazca Lines stretch like cosmic graffiti. Across the arid plains of southern Peru, where the desert is so dry that footprints can last for centuries, strange figures stretch across the earth. From the ground they appear as nothing more than shallow grooves in the dust, but from the air, an altitude ancient builders were never meant to see, the shapes resolve into vast geoglyphs, a monkey with a spiraled tail, a hummingbird poised mid-flight, a spider with impossibly long legs, trapezoids, straight lines that run like runways toward the horizon. These are the Nazca Lines, etched between 500 BCE and 500 CE, and they are among the most enduring mysteries of the ancient world. The sheer scale of these figures boggles the imagination. Some are hundreds of feet across, drawn with such precision that they remain clear from the sky even 2,000 years later. Their construction was surprisingly simple. Workers removed the reddish surface stones of the desert to expose the pale earth beneath, leaving behind pale grooves against dark soil. Yet simplicity does not explain the purpose. Why create figures that can only truly be seen from above in a world where flight was impossible? Scholars still debate whether they were meant for gods looking down, or whether their creators found ways, through hills and platforms, to glimpse the shapes themselves. The aridity of the Nazca Desert preserved these lines remarkably well. Unlike paintings or carvings that decay with time, the desert floor here is so stable that the lines have endured almost unchanged. In a way, the desert itself conspired to hold the mystery, keeping the intentions of the Nazca people sealed in plain sight. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of wooden stakes placed at the corners of some lines, suggesting careful planning with rudimentary geometry. This shows that the Nazca were not simply wandering artists, but methodical designers, mapping their visions across miles of barren earth. Theories about their purpose are as varied as the figures themselves. Some scholars propose they were ritual pathways, walked in ceremonies to honour gods of water and fertility. In a desert where rainfall was rare and precious, such ceremonies might have been a desperate dialogue with the heavens. Others see the lines as astronomical markers, alignments with solstices or star risings, turning the desert into a massive observatory. Then there are fringe ideas that the lines were landing strips for alien visitors or messages meant for skyborne beings. While such notions belong more to science fiction than science, their persistence shows the depth of our fascination. Scholars still debate whether the lines were sacred offerings, celestial calendars, or something beyond our categories. One detail often overlooked is the variety of figures. The animals, spider, monkey, hummingbird, are not random. Many correspond to creatures tied to fertility or water in Nazca mythology. The spider, for example, was associated with rain, its long legs stretching toward the sky. The hummingbird, agile and small, was believed to carry messages between the living and the divine. Even the abstract trapezoids may have had meaning, perhaps representing water channels or sacred routes of pilgrimage. Modern technology continues to reveal new geoglyphs. Drones and satellite imagery have uncovered smaller, fainter figures hidden beneath centuries of dust, showing that what we thought we knew is only part of a much larger canvas. Each new discovery adds both clarity and confusion, expanding the scope of the mystery. Standing on the desert floor, the lines appear meaningless, mere scratches against endless dust. But from the air, the desert transforms into a vast gallery, a message board written on the earth itself. Were these signs meant for gods above, for distant ancestors, or for the people themselves, tracing paths in ritual dances? The Nazca left no written explanation, only lines that stretch toward the horizon, figures scratched for the sky, still speaking across 2 millennia in a language we cannot translate. Marks without a mouth. Indus symbols speak but never explain. Far from the deserts of Peru, across the fertile floodplains of the Indus Valley, another mystery lingers, not scratched into soil, but etched into stone. The Indus Valley civilization, which flourished between 2600 and 1900 BCE in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, left behind sprawling cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. These settlements had straight streets, advanced drainage systems, standardized weights, and complex trade networks. Yet for all their sophistication, the voices of the Indus remain locked away, trapped in symbols carved on seals and pottery. The script of the Indus people, tiny markings no more than a few characters long, has resisted decipherment for over a century. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, the Indus script comes without a Rosetta Stone to unlock it. Scholars have collected over 4,000 distinct symbols, often arranged in sequences, but none long enough to reveal a grammar. Some believe it was a full language, others argue it was a set of religious or political symbols never intended for daily speech. Scholars still debate whether the Indus script records spoken words at all, or whether it was a symbolic shorthand whose meaning is forever beyond us. The seals themselves are striking. Small stone stamps, often depicting animals like bulls, elephants, and mythical creatures, carry these inscriptions. Some scholars suggest that the animals may represent clans, deities, or cosmological symbols. One famous seal shows a seated figure surrounded by animals, interpreted by some as a prototype of the Hindu god Shiva, lord of beasts. If true, it would suggest a religious continuity stretching back thousands of years. Yet without the words to accompany the images, we can only speculate. What makes the enigma more haunting is the silence left by an otherwise advanced culture. The Indus people built granaries, crafted jewellery, traded as far as Mesopotamia, and lived in cities housing tens of thousands. Yet they left behind no monumental palaces or temples, no carved royal statues, no long inscriptions boasting of kings and battles. Instead, they left seals, small, portable, almost humble objects. Were these markers of trade, religious tokens, or signatures of identity? Without translation, the culture's heart remains closed to us. Fringe theories have flourished in the void. Some claim the script encodes mathematical knowledge lost to later ages, while others imagine it as a cipher holding secrets of forgotten technologies. A few even argue that the script was never a language at all, but a ritual code shared only by priests, a mystery intended to remain mysterious. In the absence of certainty, each suggestion reflects more of us than of them. Modern computing has joined the quest. Algorithms have analysed symbol sequences, finding patterns that resemble real languages, suggesting structure rather than randomness. Yet structure alone is not enough. Without bilingual texts, the code remains unbroken. It is as though we are staring at the locked door of a house, knowing there is something inside but lacking the key. And so the Indus civilization stands as a paradox, one of humanity's first urban cultures, larger in area than both Egypt and Mesopotamia, but voiceless to us. We can walk their streets, trace their drainage systems, touch their beads of carnelian and lapis lazuli, but we cannot hear their thoughts. Their words remain marks without a mouth, symbols that speak but never explain. Perhaps that is the final irony. A civilization advanced enough to trade across oceans and build cities on a grid, yet one whose true story remains sealed in silence. Until we unlock their script, or accept that it cannot be unlocked, the Indus people will remain as much a riddle as the seals they left behind. The giants with no tribe, Olmec heads, remain without context or heirs. Deep in the jungles of Mexico, where humidity blurs the edges of time, colossal stone faces emerge from the earth. These are the Olmec heads, carved between 1200 and 400 BCE, each weighing up to 40 tons, each fashioned from basalt dragged across miles of unforgiving terrain. Their features are striking: broad noses, full lips, helmet-like headdresses. They gaze forward with an expression both stern and enigmatic, as though guarding secrets from an age that refuses to explain itself. The Olmec civilization is often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, predating the Maya and Aztec. Yet unlike those later empires, the Olmecs left behind no great cities still standing, no written texts to boast of their kings, no monuments with explanatory inscriptions. Instead, they left us these massive heads, monuments to power, identity, or divinity. But to whom do they belong? Were they portraits of rulers, warriors, or gods? Scholars still debate whether the heads depict specific individuals or symbolic archetypes. Moving such massive stones was itself an extraordinary feat. The basalt quarries lay miles away from where the heads were finally placed. Without wheels, without beasts of burden, the Olmecs somehow transported and sculpted these colossal blocks with tools no harder than stone. Modern experiments suggest teams of hundreds could have rolled them on logs or dragged them with ropes, yet the labour speaks of an organised society, capable of mobilising resources for the sake of images whose meaning we can only guess. The heads vary in detail. Some wear intricate headdresses, suggesting ceremonial or military roles. Others bear faint traces of paint, reminding us that these sculptures were once brightly coloured, not the weathered grey we see today. Still, they share a consistent intensity, a gaze that feels personal, almost confrontational. Some researchers argue the helmets are evidence of early ball games, precursors to the ritual sport played by later Mesoamerican cultures. Others suggest they were protective gear for warriors, but no definitive answer has emerged. Legends swirl around the heads. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, fringe theorists claimed the features suggested African origins, imagining transoceanic contact long before Columbus. Mainstream archaeology rejects such claims, recognizing instead the diversity of human features and the capacity of the Olmecs themselves to carve their likeness. Still, the persistence of these alternative interpretations shows how powerfully the heads capture our imagination. They feel out of place, too human and too monumental at once. What is most haunting is the silence of their setting. Unlike the pyramids of Giza or the temples of Angkor, these heads are often found alone, half buried in soil or hidden in forest clearings. They are not arranged in lines or rows, not clustered in ceremonial plazas, but scattered as though abandoned. Some may once have flanked important sites now erased by time, but we cannot be certain. Their isolation amplifies their mystery, each one a lone sentinel of a vanished people. The Olmecs themselves disappeared by 400 BCE, centuries before the rise of the Maya. Their influence, however, echoes in the civilizations that followed. The jaguar motifs, the ball games, the fascination with monumental art. But the Olmecs themselves left no written chronicles, only faces carved in stone. Scholars still debate whether we should view them as kings, athletes, gods, or ancestors. Whatever the truth, the heads endure as solitary monuments to a people whose voice has been silenced, leaving us only the gaze of giants with no tribe. Standing before one, the effect is unsettling. The eyes seem alive, carved not just into stone but into memory. They remind us that whole civilizations can rise, flourish and vanish, leaving behind only fragments too heavy to forget. Shapes that cross oceans, pyramids appear where cultures never met. From the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Mesoamerica, from the plains of Sudan to the hills of China, one shape rises again and again, the pyramid. Across continents separated by oceans, civilizations that, by all mainstream accounts, never had contact with each other, chose the same monumental form, massive triangles of stone reaching toward the heavens. Why? Was it coincidence, necessity, or something deeper? The Egyptian pyramids are the most famous, of course. Giza's colossal tombs aligned with the stars, built around 2500 BCE for pharaohs who believed their souls would ascend to the afterlife. Yet, at the same time, across the world, other pyramids were taking shape. In Mesoamerica, centuries later, the Maya and Aztec built step pyramids like El Castillo at Chichen Itza or the Temple of the Sun at Teotihuacan. These were not tombs, but ceremonial platforms, sites for sacrifices and rituals, stairways connecting the human and divine. Thousands of miles away, in Sudan, the Nubians raised hundreds of steep pyramids at Meroe. echoing Egypt but with sharper angles and distinct styles. In China, near Xi'an, massive earthen mounds, once gleaming with white stone, hold the tombs of emperors, many still unexplored. Even in Indonesia, the terraced pyramid of Gunung Padang has stirred debate, with some geologists claiming it may be tens of thousands of years old, though mainstream scholars remain skeptical. Scholars still debate whether these far-flung pyramids share a common inspiration or simply reflect humanity's instinct to build mountains when nature did not provide them. One explanation is practical. Pyramids are stable. The wider the base, the taller a structure can rise without collapsing. For ancient builders without steel or cranes, the pyramid was the most logical way to build big. It is, in a sea, now's an engineering solution more than a cultural connection. Yet logic alone cannot explain the shared symbolism, the alignment with stars, the association with gods, the use as stairways between heaven and earth. Fringe theorists have long seized on the similarity, suggesting a lost global civilization, or even visitors from beyond who carried architectural knowledge across oceans. While mainstream archaeology rejects such ideas, the parallels remain striking. Why did cultures separated by oceans dream of the same shape, the same cosmic mountain built by human hands? Consider Teotihuacan in Mexico, its Avenue of the Dead aligned with celestial events. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza, its sides oriented almost perfectly to the cardinal points. Consider the pyramids of China, some aligned to solstices, hidden under centuries of forest. Each culture saw the pyramid not merely as stone, but as cosmos, order imposed on chaos, eternity carved from earth. And then there are the myths. In Mesoamerican tradition, the gods themselves descended on pyramid-shaped mountains. In Egypt, the pyramid's sloping sides were said to mimic the rays of the sun, guiding the pharaoh's soul upward. In Polynesian myth, the world itself was born from a great mound rising from the sea. Across cultures, the pyramid is not just architecture, but cosmology. Scholars still debate whether this reflects a universal human instinct or echoes of a memory shared across time. Standing at the base of any of these monuments, one feels the same sensation, a pull upward, a sense of connection between ground and sky. Whether in the burning deserts of Giza, the humid air of Mexico, or the silent plains of Sudan, the pyramid remains humanity's recurring dream, a shape that crosses oceans, cultures, and centuries. Circles that measured dawn, Stonehenge calculated sun before clocks did. On the rolling plains of southern England, massive stones rise from the earth in a circle, their silhouettes etched against grey skies. This is Stonehenge, perhaps the most iconic prehistoric monument in Europe, and one of the most enduring riddles of human ingenuity. Built in stages between 3000 and 2000 BCE, its great sarsen stones weigh up to 25 tons each, transported from miles away, while smaller bluestones came from quarries in Wales, more than 150 miles distant. For a society without wheels or beasts of burden, the effort was monumental. But the greater mystery lies not in how the stones were moved, but why they were arranged in such a precise circle, aligned with the movements of the sun. At midsummer, the sun rises directly above the heelstone, casting light into the heart of the circle. At midwinter, the sun sets between the largest uprights, marking the turning of the year. Stonehenge, in other words, is not simply a monument, it is a calendar written in stone. Scholars believe its builders tracked solstices and equinoxes, measuring seasons long before mechanical clocks or written calendars. For an agricultural society, such knowledge meant survival, knowing when to plant, when to harvest, when to prepare for the long winter. Scholars still debate whether Stonehenge was primarily a temple, an observatory, or both at once. The stones also speak of community. The logistics of building such a monument suggest a society capable of remarkable organisation, gathering hundreds of workers for decades of labour. Some archaeologists argue that Stonehenge was a place of pilgrimage, drawing people from across Britain for ceremonies. Excavations nearby reveal feasting grounds littered with animal bones, evidence of gatherings that may have been as much social as sacred. Yet the monument has always attracted stranger theories. Some fringe voices claim it was a site of ancient healing where the blue stones carried mystical energy. Others imagine it as a landing pad for extraterrestrials, the geometry serving purposes beyond human understanding. While such ideas lack evidence, they reflect the aura of the site, a place that feels otherworldly even now, its stones heavy with meaning we cannot entirely decode. What is most striking is the layering of use across centuries. Stonehenge was not built in one moment, but across generations, with stones moved, rearranged, replaced. For the people who came to it, the monument was alive, evolving, shaped by the needs of each age. By the time Rome marched into Britain, Stonehenge was already ancient, its original purpose forgotten. Later, medieval writers spun legends of Merlin and giants as its builders, seeking to explain what even then was inexplicable. The precision of its alignments still impresses. Archaeologists using computer simulations have shown that Stonehenge could track lunar cycles as well as solar ones, predicting eclipses with surprising accuracy. If true, the monument was not just a ceremonial site, but a scientific instrument, blending ritual and astronomy. Scholars still debate whether such sophistication was intentional or a byproduct of simpler alignments. Standing inside the circle today, especially at dawn or dusk, one senses what the ancients must have felt: the merging of earth and sky, stone and sun, human and cosmos. The circle frames the horizon, turning the endless sky into a stage where celestial events are marked and remembered. In that way, Stonehenge is less a ruin and more a clock that has never stopped ticking, measuring dawns long after its builders vanished. A clock from the wrong century, Antikythera turns time against history. In 1901, divers searching the depths near the Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon a shipwreck that would rewrite our understanding of ancient technology. Among the cargo of statues and amphorae lay a corroded lump of bronze and wood. At first, it seemed unremarkable, but as researchers carefully examined it, gears and inscriptions emerged, fragments of a machine so complex it should not have existed in its time. Known today as the Antikythera mechanism, this artifact dates to around 100 BCE, yet it carries the mind of a modern clockmaker, centuries before the first mechanical clocks were supposed to exist. When restored and studied through X-rays, the mechanism revealed a network of more than 30 bronze gears intricately interlocked. Turning a crank could predict the positions of the sun, moon, and even eclipses. Dials tracked the 4-year cycles of the Olympic Games, while others mapped planetary motions. It was not a toy, but a scientific instrument, a kind of analog computer hidden inside a wooden box. Scholars still debate whether the Antikythera mechanism was unique or one of many such devices lost to history. The sophistication is staggering. No other known device of comparable complexity appeared for at least 1,000 years afterward. To find it in 100 BCE is like discovering a jet engine inside a medieval castle. The Greeks were brilliant astronomers, to be sure, but how did they leap to such mechanical genius? Was it the lost work of a master inventor like Archimedes? Some believe the ship carrying it may have sailed from Rhodes, a hub of Hellenistic science. Others suspect it was the product of a small circle of craftsmen, their knowledge vanishing when Rome's empire consumed Greece. Inscriptions on the device hint at its purpose. The markings describe cycles of the moon, and eclipses, suggesting the mechanism was not just theoretical but practical, perhaps used to plan festivals, agricultural activities, or religious rituals tied to celestial events. For the Greeks, the heavens were both science and myth, a cosmic order reflected in human life. To hold such a device was to hold the rhythm of the universe in one's hands. And yet the story is also one of loss. If the Greeks could build such machines, why do we not find others? Why did mechanical ingenuity leap forward only a millennium later in the workshops of medieval Europe? Scholars still debate whether the Antikythera mechanism was an isolated marvel or the surviving fragment of a wider tradition erased by conquest, fire, and forgetting. The aura of mystery deepens with fringe interpretations. Some claim the device hints at knowledge handed down from an earlier, lost civilization, an Atlantis of science, its secrets trickling into Greece before vanishing again. While mainstream historians reject such speculation, the temptation remains strong. The mechanism feels like an orphan of history, proof of brilliance with no ancestors and no descendants. Today, replicas have been built using the same techniques of bronze casting and hand-cut gears. When turned, the device comes alive, its wheels spinning like a miniature cosmos, the heavens moving at the pace of human touch. To see it in action is to feel time itself become mechanical, tangible, and strangely intimate. The Antikythera mechanism reminds us that history is not always linear. Knowledge can leap forward, then vanish. A single artifact can reveal a lost world of genius, leaving us to wonder what else was created, what else was possible, and how much of human achievement has slipped beneath the waves of time. Armies without a story. Sea peoples shattered empires and left no trace. Around the 12th century BCE, the great powers of the Bronze Age began to fall like dominoes. The mighty Hittite Empire collapsed, Egyptian rule was shaken, Mycenaean palaces burned, and cities across the eastern Mediterranean lay in ruins. This sudden and widespread destruction puzzled scholars for generations. At the heart of it all stands a shadowy force known only as the Sea Peoples, a coalition of raiders who struck from the sea, leaving devastation in their wake and almost nothing else behind. We know of them primarily through Egyptian records. In the inscriptions of Pharaoh Ramses III at Medinet Habu, carved around 1175 BCE, the Sea Peoples appear as fearsome invaders, attacking with ships and chariots. Ramses boasts of repelling their assault, his army standing as the last bulwark against collapse. The hieroglyphs depict ships locked in battle, foreigners in distinctive feathered headdresses and short kilts, their families and ox-drawn carts trailing behind them. These were not mere pirates, but entire peoples on the move, yet who they were remains an enigma. Theories abound. Some suggest they were refugees from natural disasters or famine, displaced from the Aegean or Anatolia. Others see them as mercenaries, who turned against their former masters, or as restless tribes seeking new lands. Their very name, Sea Peoples, comes not from their own tongue, but from the Egyptians, who recorded them as outsiders from across the waves. Scholars still debate whether they were a single confederation or a loose collection of tribes driven by desperation and opportunity. What is certain is the scale of the upheaval they caused. The late Bronze Age was a connected world. Kingdoms traded copper, tin, grain, and luxury goods across seas and overland routes. The Sea Peoples' invasions shattered this network, plunging much of the eastern Mediterranean into a centuries-long dark age. Literacy declined, palaces crumbled, and political structures collapsed. Only Egypt managed to survive, though weakened. In a sense, the Sea Peoples were not just raiders, but agents of transformation, closing one chapter of history and opening another. Strangely, they left no records of their own, no monuments, no inscriptions, no cities definitively linked to them. Their presence is a ghostly echo in the stories of others, seen only in the wreckage they left behind. This absence invites speculation. Some fringe ideas link them to the fabled Atlanteans, cast adrift after their homeland sank. Others imagine them as survivors of distant migrations, perhaps from as far away as Sardinia or Sicily. While such theories remain unproven, the absence of direct evidence makes them difficult to dismiss outright. Archaeological traces sometimes hint at their passage. Sudden shifts in pottery styles, new weapon types, destroyed urban layers. In Cyprus and the Levant, burned cities align with the timeline of their raids, but linking these clues definitively to the Sea Peoples remains elusive. Were they destroyers, settlers, or both? Did they vanish into the cultures they conquered, absorbed into anonymity? Scholars still debate whether the Sea Peoples disappeared entirely or became part of the very societies they once attacked. Their story lingers because it feels incomplete, like a half-erased memory. The fall of the Bronze Age was one of history's great collapses, and at its centre lies a people who seem to come from nowhere and return to nowhere. Standing in front of Ramses's temple reliefs today, one sees not just propaganda of victory, but the only surviving images of an entire vanished world. The Sea Peoples remind us that history does not always belong to those who build, but sometimes to those who burn. The statues that refuse to fall, moai, stand like guardians of silence. Far out in the Pacific Ocean, on a remote volcanic island known as Rapa Nui, better known to us as Easter Island, nearly 900 stone statues stand as mute witnesses to a mystery that has puzzled the world for centuries. These are the moai, enormous figures with elongated heads, heavy brows, and torsos emerging from the ground as though rising from the earth itself. Some reach over 30 feet in height, weighing as much as 80 tons. They face inward toward the villages, as if watching over the people rather than gazing at the sea. But who built them, how they were moved, and why they were erected remain questions without final answers. Carved from volcanic tuff at the Rano Raraku quarry, the moai were shaped using stone tools, their surfaces smoothed and detailed with remarkable skill. Yet the quarry is miles away from many of their resting places. To move such giants across rough terrain without wheels or draft animals seems impossible. And yet, the Rapa Nui people did it. One enduring legend says the statues walked to their destinations. Modern experiments suggest that with ropes and careful rocking, teams could indeed make the statues walk upright, swaying side to side like immense stony dancers. Scholars still debate whether this was truly the method or a modern reconstruction of myth. The purpose of the moai is equally enigmatic. Most researchers agree they represented deified ancestors, embodiments of power and protection. Their placement facing inland suggests they watched over the living, anchoring the community to its past. But not all were finished. Hundreds of half-carved moai remain in the quarry, as if work suddenly stopped. Why? Was it famine, conflict, or the collapse of society? The reasons are as mysterious as the statues themselves. Easter Island also holds the haunting story of ecological decline. Evidence suggests that the island, once covered in palm forests, was stripped bare over centuries of human settlement. Some historians argue that building and moving the moai required so much wood and rope that deforestation accelerated, leaving the island vulnerable to famine. Others counter that rats introduced to the island may have played an even greater role by consuming palm seeds. In either case, the moai stand as silent markers of both ambition and loss. Scholars still debate whether the statues symbolise triumph of human ingenuity or the hubris that led to collapse. The people of Rapa Nui endured, however. Oral traditions describe how rival clans competed to build ever larger statues, each trying to outdo the others. The Moai thus became more than religious icons. They were political weapons in stone, proclaiming prestige and authority. When resources dwindled, conflict erupted, and many statues were toppled by rival groups. The statues that refuse to fall today are those that have been restored, raised upright again by modern hands in tribute to their mystery. Fringe theories, of course, stretch further. Some claim the Moai were markers for ley lines of Earth energy, or even built with help from extraterrestrials, ideas fueled by the sheer improbability of moving such giants. But the truth is no less astonishing that a small, isolated island society carved and transported nearly 1,000 massive figures using only ingenuity, persistence, and collective will. Standing before the Moai today, their faces impassive against the wind, one feels both awe and melancholy. They are guardians without speech, ancestors without names, monuments both to human greatness and human fragility. They endure when their makers' voices have faded, statues that refuse to fall, still standing against time and silence. A city invented or remembered. Atlantis balances between allegory and archaeology. Few stories haunt the imagination quite like Atlantis. The tale comes from the Greek philosopher Plato, who in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias described a mighty island civilization that flourished some 9,000 years before his time. According to Plato, Atlantis lay beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. It was a land of great wealth, advanced technology, and imperial ambition, but its hubris brought destruction, and in a single day and night of misfortune, Atlantis sank beneath the waves. For centuries, readers have wondered, was Plato recounting pure allegory, a moral fable about the dangers of arrogance, or was he echoing a memory preserved in fragments of a real place? Scholars still debate whether Atlantis was a fiction invented to illustrate Plato's philosophy, or a garbled recollection of ancient disasters passed down through oral tradition. Some researchers argue that the story may have been inspired by the eruption of Thera Santorini around 1600 BCE, which devastated the Minoan civilization. The parallels are striking, a wealthy maritime culture undone by nature's fury, leaving behind ruins swallowed by the sea. Others suggest Atlantis was a composite myth, blending memories of various cultures and catastrophes into a single dramatic narrative. But Atlantis refuses to remain confined to philosophy. Over the centuries, seekers have placed it in every corner of the globe, the Caribbean, Antarctica, Spain's southern coast, even beneath the Sahara. Fringe theories abound, claiming Atlanteans wielded crystal energy, advanced machines, or knowledge handed down from lost extraterrestrials. While such claims lack evidence, they reveal the power of the myth, the longing to believe in a lost golden age just beyond history's reach. Ancient writer beyond Plato offered their own echoes. Some Roman authors hinted at lands beyond the Atlantic, while Egyptian priests in Plato's story claimed they preserved the tale from hieroglyphic records. Could there have been a memory of civilizations erased by rising seas at the end of the last ice age? Around 10,000 BCE, shorelines across the globe shifted dramatically, drowning coastal settlements. It is not impossible that some memory of these vanished communities persisted in myth. Scholars still debate whether Plato's date for Atlantis, so impossibly early, was symbolic exaggeration or a distorted survival of Ice Age floods. What makes the Atlantis story so enduring is its dual nature. As allegory, it warns against human pride, against societies that grow powerful but forget virtue. As archaeology, it tempts us with the possibility of lost knowledge, forgotten cities waiting beneath waves or sand. In both cases, it reflects our fascination with origins, our suspicion that we are not the first to rise nor the last to fall. Standing on the cliffs of Gibraltar, looking out to the Atlantic, one can almost imagine ships sailing from a vanished island, their sails catching the same winds that carried later explorers. Whether Atlantis was invented or remembered, it endures because it bridges myth and history, dream and disaster. And perhaps that is its greatest truth, that even in forgetting, humanity remembers. Walls that answered back, temples designed for echoes of gods. In the ancient world, architecture was never merely about shelter. It was about sound, resonance, and presence, the way stone could shape not only space, but the very voice of the divine. Across cultures, we find chambers, temples, and sanctuaries built with uncanny acoustic properties, designed to amplify, distort, or transform human voices into something otherworldly. These were not just walls of stone, but instruments of ritual, spaces that answered back. Take Chavin de Huantar in the Peruvian Andes, built around 900 BCE. Its labyrinth of underground passages carries strange acoustic qualities. The sound of conch shell trumpets, discovered on site, can be made to reverberate through corridors until they resemble the roar of jaguars or thunder. Archaeologists believe priests used these effects to terrify or awe initiates, immersing them in a sensory experience where architecture and sound merged into sacred theatre. Scholars still debate whether these chambers were designed purely for ritual or whether their acoustics were an ingenious accident. In Malta, the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, an underground complex carved nearly 6,000 years ago, contains chambers that resonate powerfully with low-frequency sounds. A single voice chanting in these spaces vibrates through the entire structure, creating sensations that modern visitors describe as otherworldly. Some researchers note that such frequencies can even alter brainwave patterns, inducing trance-like states. Was this deliberate? Were the builders intuitively shaping spaces to harness sound as a doorway to altered consciousness? Scholars still debate whether ancient architects understood acoustics scientifically or relied on spiritual intuition honed through experience. Egypt, too, offers whispers of sound manipulation. In temples along the Nile, narrow cham, burrs and stone corridors seem to echo with unusual clarity, amplifying chants and ritual music. Some inscriptions suggest the gods themselves spoke in resonant tones from within these sanctuaries, their voices carried by architecture. Was this divine presence, or the carefully engineered effect of stone and geometry? Even Stonehenge, which we encountered earlier, has been shown to carry acoustic properties. Researchers experimenting with sound in reconstructed models found that the circle can create a kind of echo chamber, enhancing voices and music in ways that might have been part of its ritual function. Imagine hundreds gathered in its circle, chants carrying and rebounding, binding the crowd in shared rhythm. What makes these acoustic temples fascinating is the universal instinct they reveal. Across continents and millennia, human beings discovered that space itself could be part of ritual. Stone shaped not only the seen but the heard. Myths often echo this. Voices of gods booming from caves, oracles speaking from stone chambers, mountains humming with hidden power. Perhaps these legends were born not only of imagination, but of real experiences in places designed to bend sound into awe. Fringe ideas go further, suggesting some of these spaces were built to harness vibrational energy, or even serve as ancient technologies of mind control. While mainstream archaeology resists such speculation, the fact remains, these chambers affect us, even today. To stand in the Hypogeum, to blow a conch at Chavin, to chant in a Maltese tomb, is to feel the past vibrate through one's bones. The ancients may not have had our physics, but they had something just as powerful: experience, memory, and a sensitivity to the unseen. In their temples, voices became divine, walls spoke back, and rituals transcended ordinary speech. In that sense, the architecture itself was alive, built not just to contain worshippers, but to participate in worship, amplifying the dialogue between human and God. Jars that shouldn't work. Baghdad relics hint at sparks of science. In the 1930s, just outside Baghdad, workers uncovered a small clay jar sealed with asphalt. Inside was a copper cylinder, and within that, an iron rod. At first glance, it looked like a simple storage vessel, perhaps for scrolls or papyri. But when German archaeologist Wilhelm König examined it, he proposed something astonishing. The jar might have been a battery, capable of producing a small electric charge when filled with an acidic liquid such as vinegar or lemon juice. This Baghdad battery, dated to around 200 BCE or later, has since become one of the most debated artifacts of the ancient world. The idea is seductive. If the jar truly functioned as a galvanic cell, it could generate half a volt or more, enough to give a mild shock or to power a primitive process like electroplating. Imagine ancient craftsmen dipping jewellery into solutions that left them gleaming with gold or silver through electrochemical reactions. It would mean electricity was discovered long before the modern era, only to be forgotten and rediscovered millennia later. Scholars still debate whether the jar was ever meant for such a purpose, or whether it was simply a storage vessel misinterpreted by modern eyes. Experimental archaeologists have tested replicas, filling them with vinegar or grape juice. The results are consistent. The jars do produce small currents, yet there is no direct evidence of wires, lamps, or electroplated objects from that time. Some jewellery with thin gold layers has been suggested as electroplated, but closer analysis points instead to traditional gilding techniques. In the absence of supporting evidence, many mainstream scholars argue the Baghdad battery may have been a simple container, perhaps for scrolls, sacred objects, or medicines. Still, the mystery endures because it feels out of place. Electricity is such a modern concept to us that imagining its discovery in antiquity stirs both fascination and unease. Could knowledge of natural forces have flickered briefly, then been lost? Ancient texts occasionally hint at strange phenomena, Greek accounts of electric fish used to numb pain, or Roman writers describing amber attracting straw when rubbed. These are real observations of static and bioelectricity, fragments of knowledge not yet systematized. Perhaps the Baghdad battery belongs in this realm of half-understood experiments, a curiosity rather than a technology. Fringe theories stretch further, as they often do. Some claim the batteries powered lights inside Egyptian tombs, their glow illuminating walls during carving. Others imagine them as tools of forgotten science, remnants of a global knowledge system erased by time. Such ideas lack hard evidence, but they speak to our yearning to see the past as not merely primitive, but strangely advanced. Whether or not it was truly a battery, the Baghdad jar carries meaning. It reminds us that ancient peoples experimented with materials, mixed metals and chemicals, and explored forces in ways we may not fully appreciate. Perhaps what we see as an accident of construction was once a purposeful design, its secret lost as empires fell and knowledge scattered. Scholars still debate whether we should dismiss the jar as a misinterpreted relic, or honour it as evidence of ingenuity ahead of its time. Today, the so-called Baghdad battery sits in a museum, a humble clay jar behind glass. It is unassuming, silent, yet charged with possibility, an artifact that shouldn't work, but just might. Glass born of disaster, Sahara's fused crystals tell of impossible fire. Beneath the scorching sands of the Libyan desert, in a region so remote it feels like another planet, lies a mystery forged in fire. Scattered across the dunes are chunks of translucent, pale green glass, some as clear as gemstones, others cloudy and scarred. Known as Libyan desert glass, These pieces can weigh up to 26 kilograms and stretch across hundreds of kilometers of desert. What makes them extraordinary is not only their beauty, but their origin. This glass is not man-made. It is the product of an event so violent that ordinary explanations struggle to contain it. The glass is composed of nearly pure silica, formed when sand was melted at temperatures exceeding 2000 degrees Celsius. Such heat is far beyond what campfires or even ancient furnaces could achieve. So where did it come from? One prevailing theory suggests a meteorite impact, its immense energy instantly vaporizing and fusing sand into glass. Yet no clear crater has been found in the region. Others propose an airburst, like the 1908 Tunguska explosion in Siberia, where a comet or meteor detonated in the atmosphere, unleashing firestorms that seared the desert below. Scholars still debate whether the glass came from a direct impact, an aerial explosion, or some other unknown catastrophe. What deepens the intrigue is how ancient peoples regarded this material. Among the treasures of King Tutankhamun's tomb lies a scarab amulet carved from Libyan desert glass, glowing golden green in its setting. This means Egyptians travelled or traded across vast distances to obtain the rare material, cherishing it as a jewel of the gods. For them, it was more than glass. It was a relic of cosmic fire, a fragment of the heavens fallen to earth. Modern researchers marvel at the glass's purity. Some samples are so flawless they rival synthetic materials used in advanced technology today. How ironic that a product of disaster in prehistory now inspires curiosity in scientists seeking strong, radiation-resistant glass for spacecraft. It is as if nature's violence prefigured humanity's future needs. Fringe interpretations, of course, imagine more. Some claim the glass is evidence of ancient nuclear war, pointing to the extreme heat needed to produce it. Others suggest alien technology, lasers or energy weapons testing their strength on Earth's deserts. While mainstream science sees no need for such explanations, the scale of destruction implied by the glass is undeniably staggering. Scholars still debate not only the mechanism of its formation, but the very absence of a clear impact site, a silence in the desert where catastrophe should have left scars. Standing among the dunes, fragments gleaming under the sun, one cannot help but feel awe. Each shard is a frozen moment of disaster, a piece of sand melted into permanence by forces far beyond human scale. The Libyan desert holds no memory of the fire that birthed them, no myth or legend that explains the event. All that remains is the glass, a silent witness to catastrophe. To hold such a piece is to hold time itself, the memory of a sky torn open, of a desert set ablaze. It is beauty born of violence, fragility forged from destruction, a reminder that even in silence, the earth remembers what we have forgotten. The town that walked away, cliff dwellings emptied in a single lifetime. In the canyons of the American Southwest, sandstone cliffs shelter the hollowed-out homes of a people who vanished. High above the desert floor, tucked into natural alcoves, the ancestral Puebloans, once called the Anasazi, built remarkable dwellings from the 12th to the 14th centuries. These stone villages cling to sheer cliffs, their rooms stacked like honeycombs, their kivas, circular ceremonial chambers, cut deep into the earth. For centuries these people flourished, cultivating maize, weaving cotton, crafting pottery, painted with black-on-white designs of striking beauty. And then, suddenly, the settlements were abandoned. Mesa Verde in Colorado and Chaco Canyon in New Mexico preserve some of the finest examples of this vanished world. Walking among the ruins today, one sees towers, storage rooms, and plazas, all the hallmarks of a thriving society. Archaeologists estimate thousands lived in these complexes at their height, but by the late 1200s, the villages emptied, doors were sealed, belongings left behind, fires extinguished. Within a single generation, the canyons fell silent. Scholars still debate why the ancestral Puebloans walked away from homes that had taken generations to build. One explanation is environmental. Tree ring studies reveal a devastating drought struck the region in the late 13th century, reducing rainfall for decades. With crops failing and water scarce, communities may have been forced to leave. Yet drought alone cannot explain the suddenness of the abandonment. Human conflict may have played a role. Archaeological evidence hints at violence, fortified sites, burned rooms, and even signs of warfare. Perhaps groups once bound together fractured under stress, leading to internal strife and migrations. Another layer is spiritual. The Puebloan worldview was deeply tied to harmony with the land. Kivas served not only as ritual chambers but as portals to the underworld, anchoring people to their cosmology. If drought or discord broke this balance, perhaps communities believed the land itself had been forsaken, compelling them to seek renewal elsewhere. Oral traditions among modern Pueblo peoples speak of migrations, journeys to find sacred centers as part of their history. The walking away may have been not only necessity, but destiny. Scholars still debate whether the abandonment was catastrophe or a deliberate spiritual act. The mystery is compounded by what came next. The ancestral Puebloans did not vanish entirely. Their descendants live today among the Hopi, Zuni, and other Pueblo tribes of the southwest. But the cliff dwellings were never reoccupied. They were left to the elements, slowly crumbling, as if deliberately set apart from the present. Why not return? Were they cursed in memory, sanctified beyond habitation, or simply impractical once broken? Fringe theories stretch further, of course. Some imagine extraterrestrial visitors influencing construction high in the cliffs, or secret knowledge carried away with the departing people. Others suggest the dwellings themselves were built less for practicality and more for alignment with celestial patterns, a stargazing architecture abandoned once its purpose was fulfilled. While such ideas are more myth than history, they speak to the haunting silence of the canyons. Today, as the sun sets over Mesa Verde, the shadows of towers stretch long across stone. The rooms are empty, but they still hold echoes of grinding stones, of fires lit against the cold, of children's voices carried on the wind. To walk among them is to feel both presence and absence, a town that walked away but left its soul behind in stone, iron that waits in the snow. Siberian tales recall domes of death. Far to the northeast of Siberia, deep within the desolate Yakutia region, lies a place whispered of in legends, the Valley of Death. For centuries, hunters and nomadic peoples spoke of strange metallic domes half buried in the permafrost, glinting dully through moss and snow. Some claimed the domes rang when struck, others that they were smooth and warm to the touch, even in the frozen cold. They called them Olgais, and they carried warnings. Those who lingered too long near them grew ill, lost their hair, or even died. The valley itself is remote, littered with stories, but scarce in hard evidence. Travellers in the 19th century reported seeing enormous metal structures shaped like cauldrons, partly hidden in earth. Local Evenki hunters avoided the region, insisting that the domes were cursed. Some described them as the remains of ancient giants, others as weapons left by gods. Modern expeditions have tried to find them, but shifting landscapes, dense vegetation, and inhospitable climate conceal whatever may lie there. Scholars still debate whether the domes ever existed, or whether they are a tapestry of folklore stitched from natural oddities. Yet the stories persist with eerie consistency. Legends speak of firestorms in the distant past, of the sky splitting open and devastation raining down. Some tie the domes to the Tunguska event of 1908, when an object, comet or meteor, exploded in the atmosphere, flattening forests for miles. Could the domes be remnants of repeated impacts, metal masses thrust up from the earth? Or are they natural iron deposits mistaken for artifacts? The absence of definitive discovery only fuels the mystery. In the mid-20th century, Soviet expeditions claimed to find unusual metal fragments in the area, but many records remain sparse or unverified. Some samples tested show traces of high-purity metals, though skeptics argue they could be industrial contamination. The Cold War atmosphere, steeped in secrecy, only added fuel to speculation. Were the domes relics of a meteorite or something more extraordinary? Ancient machines, perhaps, left behind by a civilization we no longer remember. Fringe interpretations flourish here. Some imagine the domes as ancient defense systems, dormant weapons that once destroyed incoming meteors. Others whisper of extraterrestrial origins, spacecraft embedded in earth and ice, their surfaces slowly consumed by centuries. Without conclusive evidence, the Valley of Death has become a canvas for our fears and fantasies alike. Still, the folklore cannot be dismissed entirely. The Evenki and Yakut peoples carried oral traditions with remarkable precision across generations. They warned not to sleep near the domes, not to drink from nearby rivers. Some modern visitors reported nausea, headaches, and skin irritation after exploring the valley, fueling theories of radiation. Yet, others found nothing unusual, only swamp and silence. Scholars still debate whether these stories mask environmental hazards, poisoned waters, geological anomalies, or whether something truly metallic and mysterious lies buried beneath permafrost. To imagine the valley is to picture a frozen wasteland dotted with silent domes, their edges glinting faintly as snow drifts past. No maps confirm their location, no photographs settle the debate. Only fragments of testimony remain. Hunters who swore they touched cold iron in the middle of nowhere. And perhaps that is the true terror of the valley, that something waits there still, half buried, refusing to reveal itself. An iron memory beneath the snow. The Book of Imaginary Plants, Voynich Manuscript, resists every translation. In a locked glass case at Yale University's Baynecker Library rests a volume that should not exist. Its vellum pages, dated by radiocarbon tests to the early 15th century, are filled with strange writing and even stranger illustrations, curling lines of text in an unknown alphabet, pictures of plants no botanist can identify, women bathing in pools connected by tubes, cosmological diagrams that resemble no known heavens. This is the Voynich Manuscript, often called the world's most mysterious book. The script alone is baffling. Written in a flowing hand, the letters suggest an authentic language. Statistical analysis shows patterns like those of real languages, with repeated words, consistent rules, and natural-looking rhythms. Yet no one can read it. For more than a century, cryptographers, linguists, and code breakers, from amateur enthusiasts to military intelligence experts, have tried to crack its code. Each attempt ends in frustration. Some claim it is a lost language, others a complex cipher, and still others suggest it is an elaborate hoax, though the sheer length and consistency of the text make forgery unlikely. Scholars still debate whether the manuscript is meaningful text or meaningless invention. The illustrations deepen the mystery. Most of the plants drawn in the manuscript are unknown. They resemble real herbs and flowers, yet none match exactly. Are they composite inventions, symbolic flora, or records of plants that no longer exist? The bathing women add another layer. They sit in tubs, linked by plumbing-like channels, as though representing medical or alchemical processes. Were these diagrams of healing rituals, fertility practices, or something stranger? The cosmic charts show stars, moons, and wheels, but not in any recognizable order. Throughout history, the manuscript has tempted minds both rational and imaginative. In the 1920s, William Friedman, one of America's greatest codebreakers, tried for years to decipher it, calling it the most difficult challenge he ever faced. In recent decades, computer algorithms have suggested possible links to languages ranging from Hebrew to Nahuatl, but none have been confirmed. Each theory sparks interest, then falls apart under scrutiny. Legends cling to the book like ivy. Some whisper it was written by a secret sect, encoding forbidden knowledge of medicine or magic. Others link it to Roger Bacon, the 13th century English scholar, imagining it as a survival of medieval experimental science. Fringe theories place its origin far earlier, tying it to Atlantis or extraterrestrials. Without proof, the manuscript becomes a mirror, reflecting the obsessions of each generation that confronts it. What makes the Voynich Manuscript most unsettling is its persistence. Unlike other undeciphered scripts, which may lack context, this book feels intentional. Page after page of careful writing, page after page of careful drawings, all bound together with a sense of purpose. Whatever its meaning, it mattered deeply to its creator. Was it the work of a lone visionary, or the manual of a vanished tradition? Scholars still debate whether the book hides deep knowledge or nothing at all. To flip through its pages is to walk in another mind's dream, one we cannot share. The plants bloom in silence, the words stream without sense, the diagrams turn like wheels in a forgotten cosmos. It is a book that insists on meaning, yet denies it. A book of imaginary plants, perhaps, but also a book of very real questions. And until its secret yields, it will remain what it has always been, a locked door in the library of human history. Stairs under the ocean. Yonaguni's terraces blur myth and geology. Off the coast of Yonaguni, a small island at the southern tip of Japan's Ryukyu archipelago, divers discovered something unexpected in 1986. Beneath the waves lay a massive structure, terraces, platforms, and steps cut into solid stone. The formation stretches more than 150 meters long and 40 meters high, with flat surfaces, sharp angles, and stair-like steps that look as though they were carved by human hands. Some call it the Yonaguni Monument, others insist it is nothing more than a natural geological formation. But when gazing at its precise lines, it is hard not to feel that we are staring at something ancient, submerged, and purposeful. The monument seems to form a stepped pyramid with rectangular platforms, pillars, and corridors. Divers describe swimming through passages that resemble hallways, past walls that rise vertically like massive fortifications. Some even claim to see carvings of animals or symbols on its surfaces, though erosion and coral growth blur certainty. If man-made, the monument would be among the oldest known constructions on Earth, yet no culture in the region is known to have built such megaliths. Scholars still debate whether it is entirely natural, entirely human, or a strange collaboration of both. Geologists point out that sandstone and mudstone in the region naturally fracture into rectangular blocks, producing sharp lines and terraces when waves erode them. To them, Yonaguni's monument is a dramatic but natural accident of geology. Archaeologists, however, remain intrigued. The size and apparent symmetry are unusual, and Japan's ancient Jomon culture, which flourished thousands of years ago, left behind ritual sites and stone structures that hint at unexpected sophistication. Could Yonaguni be a drowned relic of such a culture, preserved beneath the sea since the last ice age? The timing fits tantalizingly. Around 10,000 years ago, rising seas at the end of the Ice Age swallowed coastlines worldwide. Vast tracts of land were submerged, erasing settlements that may never be rediscovered. If Yonaguni is truly man-made, it would place its builders in this shadowy, prehistoric window, when human societies were transitioning from hunter-gatherers to settled life. That alone would rewrite our understanding of civilization's origins. Scholars still debate whether the monument was ever inhabited, ceremonial, or even meant as architecture at all. Local legends add another layer. Okinawan folklore tells of an ancient kingdom that once thrived on islands now drowned by the sea. Some call it the Land of Mu, a mythical Pacific Atlantis. Though such tales cannot be taken literally, they echo the memory of rising waters, of cultures erased by the ocean's advance. Perhaps Yonaguni is not myth made stone, but memory made geology. Fringe theories, of course, go further. Some claim Yonaguni was built by an advanced lost civilization, its knowledge lost to time. Others suggest extraterrestrial influence, or even a deliberate construction designed to align with stars or currents. While mainstream science finds no need for such speculation, the monument's uncanny geometry continues to invite it. To dive among Yonaguni's steps is to feel a strange unease. The water distorts edges, the sunlight flickers across flat plains, the silence of the sea makes the structure feel abandoned. Whether natural or human, the monument is a reminder of how easily time and water erase certainty. It stands as a stairway beneath the ocean, a threshold where geology and archaeology blur, where myth clings tightly to stone. Concrete smarter than ours. Roman walls still stand while ours crumble. Across Europe and the Mediterranean, Roman ruins still rise against the sky. Aqueducts carry their arches across valleys. Amphitheatres yawn, open to the sun. Harbours and piers still grip the sea. Many of these structures are nearly 2,000 years old, older than entire nations, yet their stone and mortar endure. The secret, scientists discovered only recently, is not in the stone, but in the concrete that binds it. Roman concrete, it seems, was smarter than our own. Modern concrete, though strong, decays quickly under salt water and weathering. A modern pier exposed to seawater may last only a few decades before crumbling. Yet Roman harbours, built with volcanic ash, still stand, their walls resisting waves and storms for centuries. The recipe, recorded vaguely by writers like Vitruvius, used lime and volcanic materials. But when modern researchers analysed samples, they found something unexpected. The concrete had not just hardened, it had grown stronger with time. Under the microscope, Roman concrete reveals tiny mineral structures that continue to form long after setting. When cracks appear, seawater seeps in and triggers new chemical reactions, causing the concrete to heal itself by growing fresh crystals of a mineral called aluminous tobermarite. In effect, Roman concrete is alive, constantly repairing its wounds. Scholars still debate whether this was a deliberate discovery by Roman engineers or a fortunate accident of their volcanic recipe. The implications are enormous. Imagine if our bridges, dams and towers could strengthen with age rather than weaken. Some modern scientists are studying Roman methods to reinvent self-healing concrete for the 21st century. Yet even with advanced tools, replicating the exact process has proven difficult. The Romans, without microscopes or chemistry labs, mastered a craft we still cannot fully duplicate. Beyond its chemistry, the story of Roman concrete is cultural. It symbolized permanence, a way to defy time itself. Their roads, their aqueducts, their colosseums, these were not temporary projects but monuments meant to last generations. Roman engineers thought not in years but in centuries, and so their materials reflected that ambition. In contrast, much of modern construction is designed for speed and cost, not endurance. The ruins we admire today may last longer than our skyscrapers. Legends about Roman ingenuity always attracted awe. Medieval Europeans, seeing aqueducts still standing after Rome's fall, often believed giants had built them. Others imagined sorcery bound the stones. Even now, the durability feels uncanny, man-made cliffs that outlive empires. Scholars still debate how widespread the advanced techniques were and whether every Roman project used them or only certain elite constructions. Fringe voices sometimes suggest Rome inherited its knowledge from an older, forgotten culture, passing down recipes like alchemy. Yet history shows the Romans were brilliant pragmatists, experimenting with local materials and perfecting what worked. Their genius was not magic, but persistence. Standing before a Roman harbour wall, waves crashing against it after 2 millennia, one realises the paradox. Progress is not always forward. Sometimes the ancients knew things we have forgotten. Their concrete still grips the earth while ours cracks and falls away. In that sense, Roman walls are more than ruins. They are teachers, whispering that endurance itself is a science we are still struggling to relearn. Skulls polished to a mirror. Crystal heads raise questions no answer fits. In museums and private collections around the world, there exist a handful of objects that have fascinated and unsettled researchers for more than a century. Crystal skulls, carved from clear or milky quartz, often life-sized. These skulls are polished so perfectly that they gleam like glass, their features uncanny in their precision. They are usually attributed to Mesoamerican cultures like the Maya or the Aztec, yet the craftsmanship seems far beyond what we imagine for their time. Were these artifacts genuine works of pre-Columbian genius, or modern forgeries cloaked in legend? The most famous example is the so-called Mitchell Hedges skull, allegedly discovered in Belize in the 1920s. Its story is wrapped in drama, said to have been unearthed in a ruined Maya temple, passed down as a sacred relic, and even claimed to hold mystical powers. Its crystal jaw is hinged, carved from the same piece of quartz, a feat difficult even with today's tools. When light strikes it, the skull glows with an eerie life, casting reflections that seem almost animate. Yet tests in the late 20th century suggested tool marks more consistent with modern rotary equipment than ancient hand tools. Scholars still debate whether the skull is authentic or a clever 19th century creation. Other skulls, like those held in the British Museum and the Smithsonian, show similar controversies. Some are crudely made, others astonishingly detailed. Laboratory analysis has revealed microscopic evidence of wheel cutting, a technique not known to ancient Mesoamerica. Yet defenders argue that the tests are inconclusive and that absence of proof is not proof of absence. Could some be genuine while others are later replicas? Beyond authenticity lies the question of meaning. Even if truly pre-Columbian, why skulls? In Mesoamerican Bell, IF, skulls were powerful symbols, representing death, rebirth, and the cycle of sacrifice. The Aztec Tzompantli, racks of skulls from ritual victims, made mortality both terrifying and sacred. A skull carved from crystal could have been an object of immense spiritual resonance, embodying the link between this world and the next. Fringe interpretations, unsurprisingly, go further. New Age traditions claim the skulls are relics of Atlantis, or gifts from extraterrestrials coded with ancient wisdom. Some believers say that when the 13 true crystal skulls are brought together, they will reveal knowledge capable of saving humanity. Such myths are fueled not by archaeology, but by the aura these objects radiate. A sense that they are not ordinary artifacts, but something liminal, balanced between science and sorcery. Still, the most haunting mystery may be psychological. To gaze into a crystal skull is to confront your own reflection, refracted through quartz, your face staring back fragmented, multiplied, ghostly. Whether ancient or modern, real or fake, the skulls provoke an instinctive reaction. They unsettle because they combine human form with unnatural perfection, life with lifeless stone. Today, scholars continue to test and retest them, while museums label them cautiously. Some are genuine artifacts, misattributed to the wrong cultures. Others are clever fabrications. Perhaps one or two may yet prove authentic enigmas. But whatever their origin, the crystal skulls endure as icons of mystery, polished mirrors of death that raise questions no answer can fit. A map too early for its time, Piri Reis charts coasts unknown to his age. In 1929, while cataloguing works in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, scholars stumbled upon a fragment of parchment that defied history. It was a world map drawn in 1513 by Piri Reis, an Ottoman admiral and cartographer. At first glance, it seemed like any early 16th century chart of the Atlantic, coastlines of Europe, Africa, and the Americas sketched in colourful inks. But then came the shock. The map showed details that should not have been known in Piri Reis's time, coastlines drawn with eerie precision and even suggestions of lands not officially discovered until centuries later. Most striking is the depiction of South America. On Piri Reis's fragment, the continent's eastern shore appears remarkably accurate for an age when Europeans had barely begun to explore it. Some argue that the map even extends further south, showing a landmass resembling Antarctica, yet without ice. If true, it would imply knowledge of the continent thousands of years before its official discovery in 1820. Scholars still debate whether these outlines are distortions of South America or genuine depictions of a southern polar land. Piri Reis himself left notes on the map, which make the mystery deeper. He explained that his chart was compiled from dozens of older sources, some of them maps, dating back to the time of Alexander. He claimed to have used both Portuguese charts and ancient maps drawn in the time of Solomon. Could fragments of knowledge from long-forgotten seafarers have survived, copied and recopied until they reached him? The map also shows details that do not quite fit with early European exploration. Some islands appear that do not exist. Certain coastlines are stretched or warped. These may be errors of projection, attempts to flatten a round world onto parchment, but others look tantalizingly precise, as though copied from sources with knowledge beyond the early 1500s. Fringe theories embrace this anomaly with enthusiasm. Some argue the map preserves knowledge from Atlantis, passed down through secret traditions. Others suggest it proves ancient civilizations achieved global navigation long before Columbus. Even extraterrestrial influence has been invoked, with claims that only aerial surveys could have produced such accuracy. While mainstream historians see no need for such explanations, the map's strange details continue to spark fascination. What is undeniable is Piri Reis's own brilliance. As an admiral of the Ottoman fleet, he had access to the best geographic intelligence of his day, including captured Portuguese charts. His work shows how global knowledge was pooling rapidly in the early 16th century as trade and conquest connected continents. Yet the possibility remains that some of his sources reached deeper into history than we realize. Scholars still debate whether his references to ancient maps were rhetorical flourish or literal truth. Today, the Piri Reis map survives only in fragments. The full world chart has been lost, leaving us with just enough to wonder. Did it truly show Antarctica's shores? Did it preserve echoes of ancient voyages erased by time? Or was it simply a brilliant compilation of the best knowledge available to a man whose empire looked both east and west, north and south, toward the whole world? To stare at its faded ink is to glimpse a crossroads of history where medieval maps, ancient whispers, and Renaissance ambition all collided. A map too early for its time, and perhaps too vast for ours. Stories that outsmarted telescopes. Dogon lore knew Sirius before science. High in the cliffs of Mali lives the Dogon people, whose traditions have carried echoes of the cosmos for centuries. Among their myths lies a story that startled 20th century anthropologists. They spoke of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, not as one star, but as two. According to Dogon lore, Sirius has a hidden companion, dense, invisible, and immensely heavy, that circles it in a long orbit. In modern astronomy, this is true. Sirius is in fact a binary system, its companion Sirius B discovered with telescopes only in the mid-19th century, yet the Dogon described it long before telescopes reached that far. In the 1930s, French ethnographers Marcel Griaule and Germain Dieterlen recorded Dogon traditions about the Po Tolo, a tiny but massive star that revolved around Sirius every 50 years. They also noted Dogon references to the rings of Saturn and the moons of Jupiter. For some, this seemed like proof of ancient knowledge inexplicably advanced. How could an isolated people in West Africa know details of astronomy invisible to the naked eye? Scholars still debate whether the accounts were faithfully recorded or influenced by contact with modern science. Some argue that the Dogon acquired this knowledge from European visitors earlier than Griaule's studies, missionaries or traders who shared fragments of astronomical fact. Others believe Griaule may have misunderstood or exaggerated what he heard, reshaping myths into scientific-sounding revelations. Yet even with such caveats, the overlap between Dogon lore and modern astronomy is uncanny. The Dogon's cosmology is deeply symbolic. They describe the universe as seeded by a cosmic egg, bursting into spirals of matter. Their myths weave together creation, fertility, and celestial motion. Po Tolo, the hidden star, symbolizes not only Sirius B, but also themes of invisibility, density, and generative force. Even if one dismisses its scientific accuracy, it is a profound metaphor for unseen powers that shape the visible world. Fringe interpretations leap further. Some claim the Dogon were visited by extraterrestrials from Sirius itself, teaching them cosmic truths. The myth speaks of amphibious beings, the Nommo, who descended from the sky to instruct humanity. Writers in the 20th century seized on this as evidence of ancient astronauts. While mainstream scholars find no need for such explanations, the imagery is striking. Beings from the stars, bringing knowledge, guiding ritual. It resonates with myths across the globe of gods or teachers descending from the heavens. Even if one removes the extraordinary claims, the Dogon story is valuable. It reminds us that myth and science are not always separate categories. People observe the stars with naked eyes, but they also see them with imagination, weaving meaning into motion. Myths preserve insights, sometimes metaphorical, sometimes practical. Perhaps the Dogon knowledge of Sirius was less about astronomy and more about conveying the unseen forces that shape life, a truth wrapped in cosmic metaphor. Scholars still debate whether the overlap with astronomy is coincidence, misinterpretation, or evidence of deeper knowledge. To sit among the Dogon and hear their stories is to be drawn into a world where sky and earth, myth and science blur together, where a star is not merely a light in the heavens, but a presence, a teacher, a mystery. Long before telescopes confirmed Sirius B, the Dogon had already woven its shadow into their cosmology. In that sense, their lore did not just describe the sky, it outsmarted the telescope, reminding us that sometimes the universe reveals itself through stories before it reveals itself through science. The puzzle that never ends. Each mystery deepens the story of us. When we step back from the fragments, giant stones buried on hilltops, glass melted in deserts, maps too early, scripts without voices, and stories that outpaced telescopes, we see not just isolated enigmas, but a vast puzzle that refuses completion. Each piece is jagged, each clue incomplete, each answer leading to further questions. Ancient mysteries are not dead relics, they are living questions, threads woven through our understanding of what it means to be human. What unites them is their resistance to certainty. Göbekli Tepe was buried with intention, but why? The Sphinx bears scars of water, but from what age? The Nazca Lines stretch for gods, people, or both. The Indus seals whisper symbols that remain mute. The Olmec heads stare without tribe. The sea peoples vanished as suddenly as they appeared. The Moai still stand, mute yet defiant. Each leaves us suspended between explanation and wonder. Scholars still debate whether we should treat them as unfinished histories, failed records, or glimpses of truths our frameworks cannot hold. These mysteries also reveal the fragility of memory. The Library of Alexandria burned, scrolls turned to ash, knowledge erased in smoke. Civilizations walked away from cities they had built, carrying nothing but stories. Myths, often dismissed as fantasy, now echo with uncanny accuracy. Floods remembered, stars named, cycles tracked. What history forgot, folklore sometimes preserved. In this way, the boundary between myth and science is less firm than we imagine. They also remind us of humility. For all our satellites, our laboratories, our digital archives, we are still vulnerable to forgetting. What will survive of us in 10,000 years? Concrete crumbles, data decays, and even language changes beyond recognition. Perhaps future generations will puzzle over our ruins as we puzzle over the Moai, wondering who we were, what we dreamed, why we built what we built. The puzzle of humanity is ongoing, and we are not its end, but its present piece. Fringe theories, Atlantis, ancient astronauts, hidden technologies, may not offer factual answers, but they speak to our hunger for continuity. We sense, perhaps rightly, that we are not the first to wonder at the stars, to measure time, to build monuments that reach for eternity. Our ancestors were not primitive shadows, stumbling toward enlightenment. They were thinkers, builders, believers, storytellers, and dreamers, just like us. Standing among these mysteries, one feels less the weight of the unknown than the weight of kinship. The hands that carved the Indus seals, that painted Lascaux, that hauled basalt for the Olmec heads, were human hands, driven by the same longing to make meaning permanent. The mysteries endure because they are not only about the past, they are about us, about our need to understand, to connect, to remember. And so the puzzle never ends. Each mystery is not a barrier, but an invitation to look deeper, to question harder, to honor the voices that time has muffled but not silenced. We may never solve every riddle, but perhaps that is the point. The unanswered questions keep us searching, keep us humble, keep us awake to the vastness of our own story. Conclusion. History is often taught as a straight line, a progression from caves to cities, ignorance to knowledge. But the mysteries we've explored remind us that the past is not linear. It is layered, cyclical, full of leaps forward and sudden silences, of brilliance that flared and was lost. Göbekli Tepe, the Sphinx, the Nazca Lines, the Indus seals, the Moai, the Voynich Manuscript, each defies simple explanation. They are not puzzles waiting for single solutions, but mirrors reflecting the complexity of human imagination. In the end, perhaps it is less important to solve them than to listen to them. They remind us that wonder itself is a form of knowledge, that questions carry as much power as answers. To sleep beneath these stories is to rest not in certainty but in mystery, comforted by the thought that we are part of a continuum stretching far before us and far beyond.